Hello everyone, in this video I am going to show you the new things in Neutralinojs project. First I am going to go through the latest release of Neutralinojs, which is a v3.0 release, and after that I am going to show you the new modifications or ongoing changes in the project. If we check the latest release, which is this v3 release, we can see some major changes there. We modified this JavaScript API front end a bit. If we check the modifications in this repository, we can see several changes. If you are migrating from v2 release to v3 release, then you can take a look into this modifications. For an example, if we check file system API, we modified this create directory method function to this new create directory function. So earlier we accepted some kind of options object to this create directory method, but now we accept directly the path. So now it is minimal and easier to use. Likewise, we modified other functions as well. For an example, this os.execCommand method we modified. If we check this method, and this os.exec command is also modified. Earlier it was like accepting one object instance, but now we accept command first, then other options as a kind of optional parameter. Also, now we don't use HTTP based RESTful communication for native message handling, but now we use WebSocket communication for native messages. So to demonstrate that, I can show the development version of the Neutralinojs binary. So if I execute the development binary like this, and if I try to execute a native method, maybe I can try to get the configuration app.config, get config, and here we have the response. So even though we are executing some native commands here, we cannot see some RESTful communication going on the network panel. The reason is that now we use the WebSocket protocol to communicate with the native Neutralinojs process. So if we have a look into this this connection, the WebSocket connection, we can see request and response. Those things are going on, those native calls related stuff. So if I try to execute this native method again, app.getConfig, we can see the request going on. So this is kind of native message to the Neutralinojs process. So each message is uniquely identified by this ID. ID is an UUID pattern generated token, and after that we have method. This is to identify the native method, and after that we have the access token. And also, if we are sending some request like maybe os.exec command, then with this native message we are sending additional data. Those are required for the native method execution. For an example, now we use this command as ls for the exec command, because we need to send the what the command is to the Neutralinojs process to execute. So after that, once we send the native request, then we get the response back from the Neutralinojs process. So this is identified and mapped by this unique ID. So that's how it works. And now we are using WebSocket communication to communicate with the Neutralinojs process. After that, we introduced a new concept called error codes. So now we can identify why a particular native code is failing and what's the reason. Earlier it was hard because it is just throwing just rejecting the promise with a kind of textual information, but now we use an error code. Then we can easily identify why the particular native method is failing. For an example, maybe I can try to create a directory here using file system.create directory, and I'm going to create a new folder called ABC. Let's check whether it is created. So I can see it is created here. Now if I try to execute it again, it will fail, right? Because this particular directory is existing already there. So if I try to call this again, now here I have this error code. So it says some unique error code and the message. So if I copy this one and go to the documentation, here we have a new section called error code. Now we can search for it. we have a match. So it says that unable to create a directory and it is thrown from this particular method. So that's how we can identify several methods failures and how to handle them with relevant actions. You can identify why particular message is failing using these kind of unique error codes, and you can handle the error accordingly. And also now we improved the static server implementation. So if I try to load a resource that is not existing already in the resource directory, like this, maybe I can open the application from another browser window. Then if I try to launch a random file, maybe it is not there, then we have this 404 error as usual. Likewise, we added support for additional MIME types as well. Then the all MIME types will work with this Neutralinojs static server implementation. Also, we added a new config option, this exit process on close. So if we are using maybe a remote URL with the Neutralinojs window, maybe I can try to add a remote URL. Maybe I can use CLI argument, this URL CLI argument. Maybe I can load github.com. So if we are loading a remote URL, earlier we couldn't close this one properly. Now also we couldn't close. The reason is that this call action is trying to call the client API that is not really existing in this context. So for that scenario, we introduce a new option. I can show how it works and how it can be enabled. So you can go to your config JSON and you can set this exit process on close to true. So if you are loading a remote URL like this, then if that option is set to true, this exit process on close, then when you are trying to close this native window, it will immediately will be closed. So it is very useful for loading different remote URLs with maybe child windows. Now there's a new method called os.getPath, and to get path method you can provide the name. So there are several accepted names are there. You can check those names in this method documentation. So this os.getPath method will return known directories like download directory, music directory. Likewise, it will work on all platforms, all supported platforms. We can give a try by executing this one, I think. I can execute that method os.getPath. For these things also, that error code will work. If I try to execute like this without any parameters, then you can see why it is failing. The parameters are missing right now, the mandatory parameters. Now we can try to get a known directory. We can try to get a documents directory like this. We can try to get the downloads directory. Likewise, this method will return all known directories. You can see all supported directory names in this documentation page. In this configuration file, we introduced a major change. So now we can override this root level configuration from each mode. For an example, now it is done already, I think. Here we are overriding port. If we try to use port maybe 8080 here, and if we try to load maybe port 2020 here, if we try to launch the application, it will use 2020 because currently I am running the application with the window mode. So this configuration option is selected. Likewise, we can override any kind of config variables, config attributes. Maybe I can show you by overriding a thing in browser mode as well. Maybe I can override URL. If if I override URL by loading maybe resources, going to use hash URL portion here, maybe browser. So now if I run this application in browser mode instead of window mode, now this URL is selected. Likewise, you can override any kind of config options from modes. Here also you can see examples, global variables, native block list, and both things are over in here. When you are executing your application in browser mode, these things are selected instead of these things defined here. We changed the dialog boxes library as well. Now we have a lot of options for displaying message boxes and displaying dialog boxes. If we check the documentation, OS show message box. Now we have a lot of options here. We can display OK button, OK cancel button, yes no button. Likewise, there are a lot of options, and also you can display various icon types as well. If I try to demonstrate that new message box implementation, we can see by showing a simple dialog like this, simple message box. So this is a normal message box, info box, and after that it will return the user action like this. And also now we can provide different choices. We can provide choice and also icon. We can try to provide maybe OK cancel and warning maybe. Now the choice is OK cancel and icon is warning. Now we have this dialog, and if we click on OK, then we can see the response is OK. And if we click on cancel, so action is cancelled. Likewise, there are several improvements, so modifications to this os.show message box, and also there's something in os.show notification, the icon is added, and also we change this os.show open dialog method as well. Now we can provide various filters like this, different filters like image. If you are going to allow user to select on the image files, you can provide the filter to filter on the image files. Likewise, and also there are several features to enable multi-selections. Now this method will not return one entry, but it will return an array of entries because now we have this multi-selections feature. Likewise, these things are changed with the new dialog boxes library. And after that we added a new configuration property for logging to handle logging. So this is the new configuration section for logging. Now you can enable logging, and you can enable log file as well, enable disable those things. Now we introduce new events because of the WebSocket communication mechanism. Now we have ready method. The ready method is triggered when the application is ready to communicate with the Neutralinojs backend. Now we have client disconnect and client connect as well. So those things are related with WebSocket implementation. And there are a couple of bug fixes and also improvement points we did, and this implementation v3 is now working fine with the v2 of the client library implementation. So those are the things happened with the v3 release. Now I am going to give kind of update about upcoming things, so unreleased things in the Neutralinojs project. So all things are all ongoing or completed things are visible in this changelog page in the main repository. Now I am going to give kind of a summary about what's going on with the project. Now we improved this os.execCommand and some modification happened with the option name, and also now it supports sending std into the process. Now we can provide user input, in other words, and also it will return std out, the standard output, and standard error, also the process identifier of the process, and also the exit code. Maybe I can demonstrate that by executing something here. So this is the latest binary version, so I can try that latest exec command method. So I'm going to execute exec command. So if I try to execute maybe gedit, when I exit the process, I can see the exit code and std error and std out, and also the PID. So PID is useful when you are running application, when you are running something from the background, then you can use this PID to kill the process, running process. Also, like I mentioned earlier, you can provide std in as well. Maybe I can use cat, going to provide std in. So you can see hello, because cat is just printing what is received from the std. And after that we are trying to provide some way to write Neutralinojs application with any language as the backend language. For example, you can use Python to create a Neutralinojs app backend. So basically you can open a Neutralinojs process as a child process, then you can communicate using the Websocket protocol. So all the access details are found in this auth info JSON file. So using that information, you can communicate with the native process of Neutralinojs. And all these are related to Neutralinojs extensions, and also we added new error code, and also there are some bug fixes as well. Here the major change is related to API extensions. So basically the API extensions are way to extend Neutralinojs API. So if to do some particular thing, the Neutralinojs API is not enough, and the requirement is doesn't fit really with the Neutralinojs API. So you can create an API extension for that. For an example, maybe if we are trying to if we are trying to communicate with the MySQL server, so in that scenario we cannot extend the Neutralinojs API with the MySQL connector. In that scenario, you can create a Neutralinojs extension using maybe Node.js or Python to communicate with the MySQL server. After the next release, we will extend this documentation by adding some details about API extensions. But for now, I am going to show you one example extension that I created to demonstrate how API extensions are working. To enable API extension support, you need to use enable extensions key here, set to true, like this. So this will enable extensions feature for the Neutralinojs process. There's another way to set this one is to true by passing as a CLI argument. For now, I am going to enable extensions by like that by passing an CLI argument. So this is the way to enable API extensions. You can set enable extensions flag here. You can just send it like this, so you can set to true as well. Both will work. So if I try to run the application using enable extensions flag like this, and if I see these logs, we can see different logs coming from this API extension. This is one of the API extension, this identifier. So it is logging something. So currently I can see it logged hello extension, and from the app I can see hello app. So this is triggered from the extension, and this message is triggered from the application. So now I am going to show you how the API extension is implemented. So to enable API extensions, like I mentioned, you can set enable extension to true, or you can send enable extensions flag to the process like this. So after that, so this section need to be added. This is defining some extensions, list of extensions. First I am using one, there are two extensions just for testing, I think this one, but not about this one. So this is having id as js.neutralinoj likewise, and after that we have command Linux, command Darwin, and command Windows. So those things are for particular operating system. So in the Linux operating system, this command will be executed to start up the extension process. Here we can use nl path as well. Now it is saying nl path and extension path like that. So I can open that extension path here. So we have extensions, sample extension. So this is the main file. When the Neutralinojs process executes API extensions, it will send several useful CLI arguments. It will send NL port, NL token, and extensions ID. So those things are enough to communicate with the main process. So now we'll open a WebSocket communication with the main process. So after that, when the communication is open, then we are going to send some message. So using the app.broadcast method, we are going to send a message to the application. So this is sending basically an event called event from extension with the data hello app. So if we closely look at the application source, which is in this main.js, we can see this when the event is triggered, when this event from extension is triggered, it is basically login the event details. So that's how we got this hello app. So it is coming from this event.detail. So this is this event is coming from the extension, right? Then it is having some logic here. Likewise, you can send likewise you can send some data from the extension, and you can send some data to the extension using this method, Neutralinoj.extensions dispatch. Then you can provide the extension identifier, event, and the message. If we check the extension source back, here we can see in the on message we are checking the event to extension message type, then we are login data. That's how this one works. Hello extension. The application is sending hello extension, and from here we are receiving it, then we are logging it. Now in that way we can communicate from the application to the extension. So this is just a quick introduction to the extension, but this is under development, and in the next version of Neutralinojs these things will be released, and we are going to update the documentation, of course, with the extensions development guidelines. So these are the new things and modifications in the Neutralinojs project. In this video I talked about the modifications in v3 release, and also I discussed some ongoing changes in Neutralinojs project. We are going to release these things with the next version. See you in next video.